My name is Layla. I'm 41 years old, and my 15-year marriage ended in just a few short seconds, with a cold text message that made me feel like my heart had stopped beating. That message arrived on a Tuesday afternoon while I was helping a regular try on a new wool coat at my small fashion boutique in downtown Seattle. My phone buzzed softly in my pocket, and when I glanced at the screen, each word felt like it tore my heart apart. I'm leaving. Eliza and I are moving to Las Vegas to start a new life. I've emptied our joint account. Good luck, Layla. I furrowed my brow, my hands gently resting on the customer's shoulders as she stood before the mirror. I heard my voice sound calm, even offering a soft laugh as I complimented how elegant she looked in the coat, as if nothing had happened. But inside my chest, each heartbeat pounded heavily. 15 years together, the evenings spent sipping wine on the porch, the promises of a shared future, all turned to ashes with a few dry words. I still remember clearly the first day I met Ryan, my ex-husband's name. When he was 35 and I was just 26, still naive and full of dreams. Now he was 50, yet he'd gotten swept up in an affair with a girl just 22, a new receptionist at his office. They'd been sneaking around behind my back for months. In recent weeks, I'd started to suspect something when Ryan came home late more and more often, sometimes claiming he had to sleep at the office for urgent work. He completely changed his style, obsessively hitting the gym, buying expensive sneakers, getting a ridiculously youthful haircut. When I asked him, he just scoffed, calling me paranoid and old. The only thing I hadn't done was confront the truth face to face. And now, that text message had thrown everything into the harshest light. I forced myself to take a deep breath, keeping my professional smile. My client, Mrs. Gallagher, didn't need to know my husband had just disappeared with his lover, taking all our savings with him. When Mrs. Gallagher was satisfied with the coat, I cheerfully walked her to the door like always. The door chime jingled softly as the glass door closed behind her. I was left alone in the silent store, the phone screen still glowing with that blinding message. I slumped into the cashier's chair, reading the words over and over again. I am leaving, Eliza and I. I didn't feel tears falling, nor did I feel myself trembling. The only thing I felt was a cold numbness slowly crawling through my body. And at the same time, a small, faint but determined flame began to flicker inside me. I put the phone down and told myself, "All right, Ryan, if you think this message will destroy me, you're in for a surprise." I glanced at our wedding photo hanging in the corner. Ryan and I once smiled so happily in that frame, but now it was nothing more than a fake memory. I stood up straight. This boutique was built on my sweat and effort for 10 years. From the tough early days to the times when loyal customers came flooding in, I decided I wouldn't let that man take anything else from me. My phone buzzed again. This time the text from Ryan dripped with sarcasm. "Don't expect me to come back. Eliza and I are at a 5-star hotel tonight. Enjoy your old junk." I let out a dry laugh, gripping my phone tightly. It wasn't fear or despair I felt. It was the start of a battle I knew I wouldn't lose. Ryan's cold messages only confirmed what I'd been sensing for nearly 6 months. Everything started one night in March when I saw his phone light up in the dark. The screen flashed the name Eliza with a bright red heart emoji. I pretended to stay asleep, but my heart was pounding wildly. After that night, I started paying closer attention. Ryan began changing his phone passwords, something he'd never cared about before. He came home later, strange perfume lingering on his collar, sometimes even telling me not to wait for dinner because of a sudden meeting. One Saturday afternoon, I happened to find a dinner receipt in his wallet for a fancy restaurant in downtown Seattle, and it crushed me because that night he'd claimed he had to rush to Bellevue to meet a client. I didn't confront him then. I quietly slipped the receipt into my secret drawer. I began carefully going over our joint finances. From bank statements to credit card bills, I scrutinized every transaction. Large cash withdrawals showed up when I was busy at the store, or he'd claim he was repaying a friend with no proof. Piece by piece, they built a clearer picture than ever. Ryan wasn't just cheating, he was planning his escape. The very next week, realizing the pattern, I met with Shelley, my best friend and financial advisor. She used to work for a law firm specializing in marital assets. In Shelley's small meeting room, I choked up as I laid everything I discovered on the table. She gently squeezed my hand and said bluntly, "Layla, you need to protect yourself immediately." Under Shelley's guidance, I opened a separate bank account at a different branch, registered solely under my own information. I started quietly transferring most of my boutique's profits there, a little each week, avoiding any suspicious patterns. I also changed the way I paid my employees so that no large sums flowed into the joint account anymore. To avoid raising suspicion, I continued depositing small amounts into the joint account, matching the boutique's usual income, keeping the balance stable so Ryan wouldn't suddenly feel something was missing. With every transaction, I saved the receipts, statements, and neatly organized them in a secret folder I simply labeled contingency. Meanwhile, Ryan grew increasingly confident in his double life. He started buying expensive leather jackets, new watches, and bragging to his friends about his so-called midlife swagger. His vague remarks about time flying and seizing youth once more only convinced me further. He was preparing to leave me, but he had no idea I was already one step ahead. One Thursday evening, Ryan suggested merging all of my personal accounts into our joint account for easier management. He smiled broadly, placing his hand on my shoulder, trying to appear caring. I responded with a bright smile, but inside I was ice cold. Yes, I think that would make things simpler too. That night, after he fell fast asleep, I went online and completed the merger paperwork, but only on the surface. I had already transferred most of my money into my separate account, leaving just enough for everyday expenses to keep him convinced I fully trusted him. Every morning, I still prepared breakfast like a devoted wife. I still kissed him goodbye and wished him a good day, even though inside me there was only disgust and determination. I patiently observed and documented every suspicious sign: luxury spa receipts in Las Vegas, plane tickets booked a month in advance, jewelry purchases I never saw at home. I'd turn my pain into motivation to prepare carefully, not to hold on, but to protect myself. The boutique, my brainchild built from scratch, kept growing steadily. I kept it completely separate from Ryan's reach. But the peak of my shock came when I discovered a lease agreement for a high-end apartment in Las Vegas under Ryan's name, drawn up just 2 weeks earlier. I printed it out and added it to my contingency folder. It was the final piece that completed the picture of his betrayal. I'll never forget that last evening before the breakup text. Ryan stood leaning against the doorframe, staring at me with a cold expression. "Layla, you've looked so tired lately. Are you sure you're okay?" I gently nodded, offering a soft smile. "I'm perfectly fine, don't worry." But inside, my true answer rang out powerfully. "I'm fine, Ryan. Much more than you think." Ryan's final text, short and cruel, became the trigger for the plan I had been meticulously preparing for months. I glanced at the wall clock. It was 6:15 p.m. The boutique had just closed. I locked up, drew the curtains, then pulled out my phone to call Sandra, the divorce attorney Shelley had introduced me to earlier. I'd met Sandra 3 times, telling her every detail about the evidence I had, the suspicions of cheating, and Ryan's signs of financial fraud. Each time we met, I updated her with new documents I collected. Sandra's voice came through the phone, cold yet full of confidence. "Layla, I've been waiting for this call. We're ready." A chill ran down my spine, but it wasn't fear. It was the knowledge that it was finally time to turn preparation into real action. Sandra scheduled me to meet her at her office at 7 p.m. to sign the final paperwork. Driving there, the lights of Seattle lit up the night, streets glowing bright, but in my heart everything felt cold and gray. I told myself, "Don't be afraid, Layla. This is the only way to save yourself." Sandra's office was on the 15th floor of a high-rise near Lake Union. When I stepped inside, I met her steady gaze. All the documents were neatly prepared: the divorce petition, the evidence files proving Ryan's infidelity, the financial statements showing his attempts to seize our joint assets. We went through every clause in the lawsuit. I asked Sandra to include all screenshots of Ryan bragging about emptying our joint account, along with the paperwork for his secret Vegas apartment. Each piece of evidence was pinned down like nails, securing the coffin of my decaying marriage. Sandra spoke in a low, firm voice as she advised me. "We'll file the emergency petition with the court first thing tomorrow morning. But if you'd like, I can have someone serve the divorce papers to Ryan directly at his current location. Do you want him to get this shock immediately?" I clenched my hand on the table. The thought of Ryan being handed the divorce files right as he basked in his sweet victory with Eliza soothed my anger. But I wasn't in a hurry. "Not yet." I shook my head, lips curling into a small smirk. "Let him enjoy a few days thinking he's won. I want this blow to land when he's completely off guard." Sandra smiled approvingly. "Then we'll time it, Layla. I promise he won't see it coming." We finished the paperwork, and I signed each page with a steady hand. After the meeting, Sandra walked me to the elevator, giving my shoulder a light pat. "You're stronger than most women I've met. Trust me, Ryan will regret ever underestimating you." I left the building, driving back to the small house I'd built into a home for 12 years. The quiet space felt empty, just me and the ticking clock. I sat at the dining table, opened my laptop, and began moving all my boutique's financial data to a secure cloud storage service, in case Ryan tried accessing my computer through my old email account. I checked the security cameras in the store and set a new password. I also drafted an email ready to send to the bank, preparing to request the freezing of all joint credit cards at the perfect moment. That night, I didn't sleep, but not out of fear. I sat by the window, watching the peaceful city of Seattle, mentally organizing every next step. I remembered what Eliza once said when I bumped into her in the lobby of Ryan's company a few months earlier. "You know, Ryan says you're just a boring housewife." Back then, I stayed silent. But now, I smirked bitterly. Who's really boring when they can't appreciate what they have? The next morning, I got word from Sandra. The documents had been successfully filed, and the court accepted the emergency motion due to the overwhelming evidence of financial fraud. From that moment on, every move Ryan made fell under legal scrutiny. I also carefully sent messages to several major boutique suppliers, notifying them that from now on, all contracts would be signed directly by me. I left no loophole for Ryan to interfere or claim ownership. The doorbell rang unexpectedly. I opened the door to receive an express delivery package. Inside were photocopies of the contracts meticulously prepared by the attorney. That thick stack of files was the solid shield protecting me from any scheme Ryan still hoped to pull off. I knew with certainty when he got the news, when he realized the sweet trick he thought he was playing on me was actually a trap back on him, at that moment, I would stand tall. And this time, I wouldn't let anyone knock me down again. On Friday morning, as I was inventorying a new shipment for the boutique, my phone started buzzing nonstop. I picked it up to see a flood of messages from the bank. The joint account had just been charged tens of thousands of dollars for 2 first-class plane tickets to Las Vegas and a luxury suite at the Grand Lotus Hotel. I curled my lips into a smirk, thinking he made his move just as I expected. I set the phone down on the counter, lifted my head to see Chloe, my new employee, looking at me worriedly. I reassured her with a gentle smile, then stepped into my office and shut the door. I immediately called the bank hotline. A soft female voice answered. "Hello, this is Vivian. How can I assist you, Mrs. Harrison?" "Hi, Vivian." I took a deep breath, my voice calm yet firm. "I need to report an urgent fraudulent transaction. My ex-husband has used our joint credit card for personal purposes, and I want these transactions canceled immediately. Could you please provide the details of the charges to cancel?" United Airlines tickets numbers 447 and 448, Seattle to Las Vegas this afternoon. Hotel booking at the Grand Lotus Hotel, suite number 1801 for 3 nights, total value over $15,000. Vivian's voice carried a hint of excitement she couldn't quite hide. We'll cancel them right away and freeze the credit card to prevent any further transactions. I emailed her the screenshot of the text Ryan had sent me earlier, where he'd bragged. In just a few hours, Eliza and I will enjoy our dream trip. Don't bother calling, I'll be busy with my new happiness. I attached the account statements and other evidence Sandra had prepared, the bank representative confirmed. Rest assured, ma'am, it's all taken care of. The tickets and hotel reservation are invalid. If they try to check in, they won't be accepted. I hung up, feeling like a massive weight had been lifted off my chest. But I wasn't done yet. I called the airline directly to make sure everything had been processed. After checking, the agent confirmed the tickets were canceled and the full amount had been refunded. Of course, the account was now frozen under the court's order. I sat down in my chair, opened the security cameras in the boutique, and watched customers leisurely shopping. My world kept turning as normal, while Ryan had no idea everything was about to crumble beneath his feet. A few hours later, the first angry text from Ryan came in, short and furious. "What did you do? The ticket counter can't find our booking. Call me right now." I set the phone down, ignoring the string of frantic messages. I had nothing left to say to him. About 15 minutes later, a video call came from Ryan's number. I let it ring, watching him appear on the screen, his face bright red, standing in the crowded airport terminal, Eliza by his side with panic in her eyes. The two of them looked like stranded fools, lost in a sea of travelers. I let out a quiet laugh. I knew Ryan had been so sure this flight would be their freedom journey to a new life, and Eliza was probably dreaming of glamorous dinners under casino lights. But what they got was public humiliation, as the ticket agent told them. "Sorry, the card has been frozen. The transaction was canceled due to suspected fraud." As the final call rang silent, I sent Ryan a single text, short and as cutting as a slap across the face. "Enjoy your trip. Oh, wait, there isn't one." I stood up and walked out to the boutique lobby, watching my employees busily organizing the new shipment. Laughter and chatter filled the air. Everything of mine was still intact. That afternoon, Sandra called me, her voice excited. "Layla, hot news. Ryan just called his lawyer, yelling about not being able to pay for anything and being denied check-in at the hotel. He knows exactly where this blow came from." I closed my eyes, savoring the moment. A weightless feeling flooded over me. For the first time in months, I felt completely in control of my life. Just then, Chloe shyly ran up to me, handing me a bouquet of white lilies with a card from a longtime customer. "Layla, you're the strongest woman I know. Never let anyone make you doubt your worth." I hugged the bouquet, silently promising myself, "That's right. I will never let anyone steal my pride again." That evening, after the boutique closed, I sat alone in the quiet room, gazing out at the bright lights of Seattle's streets. My phone kept buzzing nonstop. I knew Ryan was desperate, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I only felt proud for having the courage to act and protect myself. And I knew this was only the beginning of my true freedom. Just a few hours after the shock at the airport, as I was tidying up the new display in the boutique, the phone rang. I glanced at the screen, hesitating for a moment. The caller was Mrs. Donna, Ryan's mother. I answered, and Mrs. Donna's voice came immediately, without greeting. "Layla, what are you doing? Ryan just called me. He said you blocked the credit card and left him stranded on the street. He says you're retaliating because he wants a divorce, right?" I could hear every tremble in her voice. I knew Mrs. Donna had always spoiled Ryan, her only son, sheltering him since he was little. "Mrs. Donna, I think you need to hear the whole story," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. "What else is there? He says you seized the boutique, won't give him a penny and threatened to sue him." "I don't recognize you anymore, Layla. You used to be so gentle. How could you be so cruel now?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Gentle? They only loved me when I was obedient. when I ran the house and boutique quietly, while Ryan spent money freely, disappearing for hours, sometimes days. But now that I dared to stand up, they called me cruel. "Do you know why I canceled the card?" I asked, slowly but clearly. "All I know is he says you're torturing him, smearing his name with friends, not giving him a chance to explain. He says you've trapped him financially, so he has nothing left." I opened my laptop, pulled up the message Ryan had sent me yesterday, and took a screenshot of him bragging. "Don't bother trying to salvage anything." I emptied the account, starting a new life with Eliza in Vegas. "Stop your pathetic attempts to cling on." I sent the screenshot to Mrs. Donna with a message. "Please read this message from your own son. Then we can talk." Silence fell. I could hear her labored breathing on the other end. I didn't know." Her voice grew small. "I understand. I didn't know either at first. But Ryan didn't just betray me emotionally. He planned to steal our entire family's finances, leaving me with nothing," I said, my voice hoarse but resolute. I then sent a photo of the lease agreement for the Vegas apartment, along with statements showing suspicious charges Ryan made using joint funds for lavish dates with Eliza. Each piece of evidence was like a knife cutting through the victim's story Ryan had painted. "Do you still think I'm the one controlling him?" I asked, my voice now calm again. I heard Mrs. Donna choke back a sob. "Dear, I had no idea. Ryan, he said you were cold, that you didn't love him anymore, that you only cared about the store." I gave a sad laugh. "Yes, I cared about the boutique, my work, because it's something I built with my own hands. Meanwhile, for the past 6 months, Ryan only cared about new clothes, plane tickets, and luxury hotel rooms for someone else." After a moment, Mrs. Donna's voice broke into sobs. "Dear, I'm so sorry. I believed him. I didn't know he was this awful. I just wanted our family to be happy." "I wanted that too, ma'am, but happiness can't be built on lies," I said, eyes stinging but my voice still firm. Before I could hang up, my phone rang again. It was Tara, Ryan's sister, who always looked down on me as the country girl lucky enough to marry her talented brother. "Layla!" Tara nearly shouted, her voice sharp. "I don't know what you're up to, but Ryan says you've gone crazy, trying to humiliate him at the airport and stealing the joint money. Stop this right now." I was ready. I immediately sent Tara the same photos I'd sent Mrs. Donna, along with a recording of Ryan's call to me the week before, when he was drunk and hurling insults. "You're just my shadow. Your boutique is nothing but a dollhouse. I'll take everything when I leave you." There was a long silence, so quiet I could hear the boutique's clock ticking with every second. Tara finally gasped. "Oh my God. Ryan, did he really say that?" "I didn't make up a single thing, Tara. I'm just exposing the truth," I replied, my voice icy. "I suggest you talk to your mother, and it would be best if you stay out of this. Everything is now in the hands of the law." I hung up. The boutique fell completely silent, but instead of feeling guilty or weak, I only felt relieved. They knew. They might hate me, they might side with Ryan, but they no longer had any reason to call me cruel or controlling. I stepped outside the boutique, taking a deep breath of the cool Seattle night air. The streetlights sparkled on the sidewalk. I knew the battle was far from over, but I had reclaimed my voice. Just 2 days after the tense conversations with Ryan's mother and sister, I got a call from Sandra. She informed me, "Layla, the court has granted the emergency hearing. The session will be held on Monday morning. Be ready." Hearing those words, I felt my body tense up, like a drawn bow waiting to release its arrow. Over the next week, Sandra and I finalized every detail of the case file. Bank statements, suspicious receipts, Ryan's threatening messages, the Vegas apartment lease, and recordings of him belittling me, bragging about how he would strip me of everything. On the morning of the hearing, Seattle greeted the dawn with a cold drizzle. I chose a simple but neat dark blue dress. In the mirror, my eyes shone with determination. The courtroom at the King County Courthouse wasn't large, but was packed with people. lawyers, witnesses, a few of Ryan's friends, and even several colleagues from the boutique there to support me. Ryan walked in wearing a slightly wrinkled gray suit, his face sallow, hair hastily washed and messy. Eliza was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps she'd finally realized the true situation. Ryan's lawyer, a tense-looking middle-aged man, began with a feeble defense. Your Honor, my client was merely seeking freedom from an unhappy marriage. His rash actions were driven by feeling stifled and controlled by his wife, which made the relationship unbearable. Sandra didn't give him a chance to catch his breath. Your Honor, we have documentation proving that my client, Mrs. Layla, never controlled her husband. On the contrary, Mr. Ryan repeatedly committed fraud, illegally spent joint funds, carried on a secret affair, and threatened to seize his wife's separate property. She placed thick folders on the judge's desk. Messages where Ryan bragged about draining the account. Receipts for first-class plane tickets and luxury hotel stays. Credit card statements showing charges unrelated to the household. Papers proving the boutique was entirely in my name since its founding, separate from marital assets. I saw Ryan's face go pale as Sandra read each piece of evidence aloud, especially when the recording played of him laughing maniacally on the phone with a friend. Just wait, I'm gonna take half her boutique. She thinks she's smart, but she has no idea I've planned everything. The atmosphere grew stifling. A few people on Ryan's side lowered their heads, unable to meet my eyes. The judge, a sharp-eyed woman around 60, nodded slightly after Sandra finished. She flipped through the documents, then fixed her gaze on Ryan, her voice cold. Mr. Ryan, do you have anything to refute this evidence? Ryan swallowed hard, lips quivering. Your Honor, I just wanted to withdraw my share first. To protect myself. By spending it all on extravagant trips with your mistress? The judge interrupted sharply. Ryan stood frozen, his eyes darting around. His lawyer stared down in silence. After a brief deliberation, the judge banged her gavel, her firm voice ringing out in the courtroom. Based on the clear evidence of financial misconduct and infidelity by the defendant Ryan, the court rules: all joint assets are frozen until the asset division is finalized. The defendant, Ryan, must return the misappropriated funds within 30 days or face enforcement actions. The court recognizes the boutique as the separate property of the plaintiff Layla, not part of the marital assets. The firm strike of the gavel was like the final blow, shattering all of Ryan's illusions. I stood up, straightened my dress, and held my head high. In that moment, I felt the mix of respect and sympathy in the eyes of some around me. Ryan stepped back slightly, gripping the edge of the table, his face pale. Sandra leaned in and whispered to me, "Congratulations, Layla. Today you won not just legally, but in spirit." Leaving the courtroom, I walked past Ryan. He reached out weakly, as if to hold me back, his voice choked. "Layla, can we talk privately?" I stopped, looked straight into his desperate eyes. "There's nothing left to say, Ryan. Don't call me again. All communication will go through the attorneys." I stepped outside the courthouse, taking a deep breath. The bright Seattle sunlight filled the plaza, a symbol of the freedom I had just reclaimed. That afternoon after the hearing, I returned to the boutique, feeling like a massive weight had been lifted from my chest. The glass doors reflected my face, no longer weary and worn as in the past months, but showing the determined gaze of someone who had taken back her life. Chloe, my young employee, came running and threw her arms around me. "Ms. Layla, are you okay? I heard the court's done." I gently squeezed her shoulders, smiling. The boutique was still here, intact, busy with customers, and I was still standing. Just one day later, the court sent an official written ruling, formally recognizing the boutique as entirely my separate property, based on the evidence submitted since its founding. I read each word, tears welling up not from sadness but from joy. This store is the child of my 10 years of effort, and it will never fall into unworthy hands. Not only the boutique, but the small house in Fremont where Ryan and I had lived was also recognized as my separate property. It was the home I bought with money inherited from my mother, solely in my name from the day I signed the purchase agreement. During our marriage, Ryan had repeatedly begged me to add his name to the deed, giving all sorts of reasons. To show trust, or so he could help with paperwork, but my gut told me to keep it as mine alone. Now I was more grateful than ever that I'd stayed firm back then. On the other hand, Ryan was trapped. The court's ruling required him to repay more than $70,000 he had unlawfully withdrawn from our joint account. But Sandra informed me, based on the account statements, nearly all that money had vanished, spent on plane tickets, hotels, designer clothes, and lavish parties. During a private meeting, Ryan's lawyer admitted, "My client currently cannot pay immediately. He'll need more time." Sandra just smiled lightly. "The law waits for no one. If he doesn't pay in full within 30 days, we'll request the court to enforce collection, including garnishing his wages or seizing personal assets." Ryan sat across the table, his face twisted, lips pressed tight. He avoided my gaze, but his hands trembled uncontrollably. It was the sight of someone who once thought he was clever, now forced to taste the bitter consequences of his own arrogance. What surprised me most was Eliza, the mistress who once clung to Ryan, not only disappeared from his life but also messaged me through the boutique's Instagram. Her short message said it all. "Miss Layla, I'm sorry. I didn't know he had done those things. I don't want to be involved anymore." That message confirmed it. Ryan had destroyed everything himself. I didn't need to smear or seek revenge. The truth had revealed itself, ending all his foolish dreams. In the days that followed, I spent time reviewing all the boutique's records, officially removing Ryan's name from any file, contract, or document where it still appeared. Even though he had never legally held rights, I wanted everything perfectly clear, leaving no tiny gap for him to exploit. Within a week, the boutique had fully recovered from the turmoil. In fact, customer visits increased as more people heard my story and came to show support. Compliments and encouragement from clients made me feel more than ever that my reputation was built not just on beautiful products, but on my unwavering defense of them. One late afternoon, as I was organizing the stockroom, my phone rang. On the other end was Tara, Ryan's sister, her voice noticeably lower and calmer than before. "Layla, I want to apologize. I know no words are enough, but I believed Ryan for too long and blamed you. Now I see you were the only one being honest." I stayed silent for a moment before replying softly. "Tara, I don't need an apology. What's done is done. Right now, I just want to focus on the boutique and my new life." And I truly meant it. I no longer felt anger or resentment. All that remained was peace. Knowing I had stood up and protected what was mine, what I had built with my own hands from nothing. As the sun slowly set behind the red brick buildings of Fremont, I sat by the boutique's register, watching the evening light stream through the shop windows, feeling a strange sense of peace. I knew that from this moment on, I was no longer just a betrayed wife. I was Layla, the woman who reclaimed her own worth. Just a few weeks after the hearing, news of Ryan's situation began to spread throughout our mutual friends and the small community where he once proudly bragged about his stable career. Everything collapsed before his eyes, and all I had to do was stand back and watch the wheels of justice turn. Ryan was fired from his company. The official internal reason stated was violation of ethics due to an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate, causing severe damage to the company's reputation. That news was like the final punch to the image of the model man he had worked so hard to build. Tara, Ryan's sister, called me one evening, her voice hoarse. "Layla, did you hear? He got fired. The company didn't just let him go, they also sent warnings to his former business partners. Now he can't get a job anywhere." I stayed silent. I didn't feel joy, only a sense of relief that justice had finally arrived. A few days later, an old friend who worked in HR at Ryan's company messaged me. "Miss Layla, I just wanted to say you did the right thing. We all knew he was sneaking around with Eliza during work hours, but no one dared speak up. Now he's lost everything. Meanwhile, Ryan had to move back in with his mother in the suburbs of Kent. Mrs. Donna called me, her voice shaky and completely different from the first time she called to scold me. Layla, I don't know what to do. He has no job, no money, and is drowning in debt. He even wants to borrow from me to pay off what he owes, but we don't have the means. I calmly replied, I'm sorry, ma'am, but I have no responsibility for Ryan anymore. Let him face his own consequences. I knew Ryan had tried to reach out to Eliza again, even promising they could start over together, but Eliza had blocked every number he had. I heard through friends that she was terrified by the ugly truth about who Ryan really was. With no home, no income, and his promises of a luxurious life reduced to ashes, he was left alone. I happened to see Eliza one afternoon as I stopped for coffee near the boutique. She stood in line, her hair pulled back, looking far more worn out than the confident, proud woman she once appeared to be. When our eyes met, Eliza froze. She lowered her head and mumbled softly, Miss Layla, I didn't know he was lying like that. I'm sorry. I simply nodded, holding no resentment and needing no apology. I walked away, leaving Eliza standing awkwardly in the crowded cafe. Rumors about Ryan spread quickly. People started to shun him, and he lost the group of friends he once drank and partied with regularly. Curiosity among acquaintances soon turned into scorn. He always thought he was a sales hotshot, but his whole career was just a bubble, an old friend of Ryan's told me while shopping at the boutique. Every attempt Ryan made to find a job failed. Nearly every major company in Seattle had caught wind of his scandal. With a record of being fired for ethical violations, no employer wanted to risk hiring him. The last message Ryan sent me, before I permanently blocked him, still sits on my phone. Short and bitter. You ruined me. You'll regret this. I wasn't afraid. I only felt pity for someone who had lost everything because of his own arrogance. From someone who used to dress sharply, ride in luxury cars, and stride confidently into meetings, Ryan now lived off his mother, took the bus, and avoided anyone he once knew. News even reached me that, weeks later, he'd tried to sell his only valuable possession, his Rolex watch, just to cover basic expenses. As winter swept into Seattle, my boutique remained brightly lit, bustling with customers. I signed a contract to launch an online shop, preparing to take my brand even further. Meanwhile, according to Tara, Ryan stayed holed up in his old bedroom at his mother's house, avoiding even family dinners. I understood then, Ryan's downfall wasn't just about being broke. It was about losing the trust of family, friends, and colleagues, the kinds of losses that are hardest to recover from. I didn't have to do anything more. Ryan had dug his own grave with his betrayal, arrogance, and lies. A few months after the hearing, my life entered a completely new chapter, one I had never dared dream of during those dark days of fear. My little boutique on Fremont Street not only recovered, but exploded with sales. News of my legal victory and my successful defense of the brand I built with my own hands spread quickly through the local business community. Many new customers came not just to shop, but to share stories, offer encouragement, or learn from how I managed my finances. By the following spring, I opened a second location in the bustling Capitol Hill neighborhood. On the grand opening day, hundreds lined up to buy the latest products from my boutique. Standing in the excitement, I remembered the days when I only had a few old clothing racks and a small corner rented from a coffee shop. Exactly 1 year later, I opened my third location in Bellevue, an area full of wealthy, stylish clients. I didn't just sell clothes. I began developing my own line of accessories, handbags, silk scarves, handcrafted shoes. My collections, which I personally designed, started to appear in local fashion magazines and on some well-known fashion blogs. I formed a professional management team to oversee the branches, hired a marketing consultant, and began appearing at events for female entrepreneurs. During a panel at the Women in Business conference in Seattle, I shared my story. As I spoke about my journey to protect my assets, every eye in the room followed me, silent with emotion. A young woman in the audience stood up to ask a question, her voice trembling. "Miss Layla, how did you find the courage not to give up when everything seemed to fall apart?" I smiled and answered, "Because I knew my own worth. I realized that if I didn't protect myself, no one else would." After the session, dozens of women surrounded me, sharing the hardships they faced in marriage, work, and life. I took the time to listen and offered the most practical advice I could, never empty words. My career continued to soar. Within 3 years, my boutique expanded to 5 branches across Seattle and nearby areas like Kirkland and Redmond. I never stopped innovating, launching eco-friendly product lines and collaborating with local artisans to create unique designs. The reputation of Layla's collection spread, becoming one of the most beloved boutique fashion brands in the Pacific Northwest. Several articles called me a symbol of resilience and independence in business. Every time I appeared in the media, I always emphasized the biggest lesson I learned from my failed marriage. Women need financial independence. Never place all your trust in anyone until you truly know their character. Love can fall apart, but your self-worth should never be lost. Some community colleges in Seattle even invited me to speak to their entrepreneurial skills classes for women. I proudly accepted, sharing not just sales and management tips, but also how to separate personal assets from marital property, a hard-earned lesson of my own. On the second anniversary of regaining my freedom, I held a small party at my first boutique. Friends, employees, and loyal customers all came to celebrate. As I raised my glass for a toast, I looked around at the bright faces and joyful laughter. I was no longer the quiet, fearful woman waiting for a cheating husband to return. I had become a successful, strong woman, living proof that as long as you don't give up, every wound can become a driving force. At the end of the party, an elderly customer took my hand and said softly, "You didn't just build a store, you built hope for so many other women." Those words made my throat tighten. Yes, that was exactly what I wanted, not just to sell clothes, but to help women believe in their worth and know they deserve happiness without depending on anyone else. 2 months after my fifth boutique opened, I received a handwritten letter in an old-fashioned cream envelope with neat, careful penmanship that surprised me. The sender was none other than Mrs. Donna, Ryan's mother. I sat alone in my office, opened a letter, and read each line with indescribable emotion. "Dear Layla, I've thought for a long time before writing these words. At first, I believed everything Ryan said. That you were cold, only cared about work, and that you pushed him into someone else's arms. I blamed you, even resented you. But when the truth came out, when I read the messages Ryan sent you, heard the things he said about you, and saw him spend all the family's money, I finally understood everything. I'm sorry for believing the wrong person, for not seeing the truth, for wrongly blaming you. If I had listened to you sooner, maybe things wouldn't have gone so far. Thank you, because even though you were hurt, you still acted with dignity, you didn't publicly humiliate him, and you didn't push our family into despair. Tara and I have learned a great lesson from you. The truth always comes out, and everyone must take responsibility for their actions. I know I don't deserve it, but I hope you can forgive me. I wish you happiness and hope your boutique continues to succeed. Sincerely, Donna." I set the letter down, my heart aching. All the old bitterness and resentment seemed to dissolve with each word. I remembered the early days when I first joined the family. Mrs. Donner had taught me how to cook, Southern-style barbecue, and gave me a hand-knitted scarf for Christmas. But out of love for her son, she had been blind, letting Ryan control the story. 2 days later, Tara showed up unexpectedly at the boutique. She wore a long coat and a knit hat, walking in with a timid look completely different from the haughty attitude she once had. I looked up from my books, our eyes met, and without saying much, Tara's eyes filled with tears. Layla? She whispered, her voice cracking. I'm sorry. You've suffered so much. I have no excuse, for Ryan or for myself, for believing him so blindly. I invited Tara to sit down and poured her a cup of hot tea. In the warm atmosphere, the story slowly unfolded. Ryan had sold off all his remaining assets, was drowning in debt, angry all the time and blaming the whole world. Mrs. Donna and Tara had to watch him spiral downward, powerless to help. Do you hate Mom and me? Tara asked, her eyes red and swollen. I shook my head. I don't hate you. I was angry, but mostly at Ryan. I understand it's easy to be deceived when you love someone too much. Tara squeezed my hand tightly. You've taught me a lesson I'll never forget. If there's anything I can do to make it up to you, just tell me. I just smiled and gently replied, There's nothing to make up for, Tara. What matters is that you and your mom now see the truth. I have a new life, and I'm happy. She looked around the boutique, taking in the shelves lined with handbags and dresses, her eyes filled with admiration. I never thought you could build something this amazing. You deserve respect, Layla. The conversation ended as Tara gave me a soft hug, saying nothing more. It wasn't absolute reconciliation, but I knew this relationship had finally closed the door on a bitter past. A few weeks later, Mrs. Donna also came to the boutique. She wasn't with Ryan, but was helped inside by Tara. She looked at me, her aged eyes brimming with tears. Thank you, Layla. Thank you for not turning your anger into a weapon to destroy Ryan. Because of you, Tara and I finally saw how wrong he was. I don't know what will happen to Ryan now, but I promise I will never defend what's wrong again. I simply bowed my head, reminding myself not to let the past pull me back. But in my heart, I knew her words of thanks closed an old chapter. Now, my boutique had become a place not only for fashion, but also for stories of strength, independence, and the freedom of women who stumbled, but refused to stay down. I thought everything had ended once Ryan lost his job and I secured the boutique, but no, he still wouldn't let go. Just 3 months after the court's final ruling, my lawyer Sandra called with news that Ryan had filed a motion to revisit the asset division. He claimed that during our marriage, he provided emotional support and therefore was entitled to a share of the boutique's revenue. Sandra just chuckled as she recounted, Layla, they're using emotional support as the basis to demand money. They have no evidence he contributed financially or through any work. The new hearing wrapped up quickly. The court dismissed Ryan's claim the same morning, since all documents proving the boutique was separate property had already been verified. Ryan was even ordered to pay the legal fees for his frivolous lawsuit. I wasn't upset hearing Ryan was still trying to sue. Instead, I felt pity. He was clinging to a past that was already dead. Meanwhile, my life continued to rise. My boutique became a go-to spot for women who loved fashion, sought uniqueness, and wanted to know the story behind every design. I launched a special product line called Revival, collections inspired by my journey of overcoming heartbreak. The new line made waves, doubling revenue that quarter compared to the same period the previous year. I was invited to speak at talks and seminars for female entrepreneurs. At every session, I shared my story honestly, without sugarcoating or self-pity, so other women would understand that no one has the right to trample on their worth. One early winter evening, I sat alone in the boutique after closing, the warm yellow lights reflecting off the display cases. I pulled from the drawer something I always kept, the old wedding photo that I had cut in half. My side remained intact. Ryan's side had been cut away. I never threw it out because it reminded me of one thing. People can change, people can betray, but you must always love yourself first. I told myself, the sweetest revenge isn't making someone else suffer, but proving they were wrong to underestimate you. After everything, I no longer felt anger toward Ryan. I only felt gratitude that he gave me a fall painful enough to wake me up so I would never fear living my own life again. I was also grateful to myself for not giving up, even when I'd once felt utterly hopeless. My employee Chloe sometimes called me Steel Layla for my decisiveness, but I would often laugh it off. I'm not made of steel. I'm just someone who once shattered but put herself back together. On the fifth anniversary of the boutique's founding, I hosted a small party for loyal customers. Standing on the stage, I looked around the room, at the radiant faces and eyes filled with trust. I spoke with all my heart. I've been through loss, betrayal, and moments when I thought I had nothing left, but those moments gave me the drive to become the best version of myself. Remember, our worth never depends on how others treat us. The entire room erupted in applause. In that moment, I knew my painful journey hadn't been in vain. It had become a spark of inspiration for many. A month later, I received an email from a woman I didn't know, a short message that deeply moved me. Miss Layla, because of your story, I found the courage to leave an abusive husband. Thank you for giving me hope. I sat in silence for a long time. I realized my greatest success wasn't just that my boutique kept expanding, but that I had turned my own story into a source of strength for others. Ryan? I heard he kept trying to file more lawsuits, but they were all futile. He was still living at his mother's house, still dreaming about glory days that would never return. As for me, I never looked back. I just kept moving forward, steady and strong, knowing that sometimes the best revenge is success. And that's something no one can ever take from me. My story didn't just close the door on a deceitful marriage, it opened a journey of self-worth. From a fearful woman, I rose to protect my assets, build a solid career, and become an inspiration for many other women. Through all the loss, I learned that confidence and independence are the keys to making sure no one can ever diminish you. My success today stands as the clearest proof. Believe in yourself, because no one else has the right to decide your worth. What do you think about Layla's journey and the choices she made? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel so you won't miss more amazing real-life stories about family and life.